I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet. Bolon is referring to that he has to walk around Spain with a knife. And I
True
think that's,
story.
I mean, we've shared on the show how dangerous it is for a Jew in Spain right now. You're way safer when you're in Israel. And I actually felt way more comfortable for you. So may you and your family get the F out of Spain as soon as possible.
I have this conversation a lot. Amen.
And on that note, also, I'd like to encourage everybody to subscribe, follow us wherever you can, and give us that 5-star review. Very helpful. So the gang is all here. Golan has gotten over his major sickness. Okay, I want to get to something right away. Men sent the story. I think it's extremely important. Trump is suing the BBC right now. And the BBC is an extremely, Golan, disgraceful organization. And extremely, from top to bottom. They've covered up rapists, predators. They've done some of the most heinous acts of a news organization can do. They've literally covered up crimes. Any news organization in America did what they did, they'd be shut down for what they did. And I'm not talking about a few stories. I'm talking about many. But what Trump is suing them for is they had a documentary in 2024, a week before the election, where they edited his January 6th speech. And obviously, they did not edit it in a good way. They edited it to make it look like he called for people to attack the Capitol, and he's threatening to sue them for $1 billion. And this is a major problem, Golan, because I'm glad that he's doing this. But the problem is, once these stories, as we've spoken about so many times on this show, guys, once a story's out and it's on the internet, you can't take it back.
That, of course, not only is that true, but the BBC is a testament to how often you can lie and cover up and obfuscate and leave out certain details or make sure that certain people are saying certain things or change language. And you do it so often that an entire population, think about it, the BBC speaks to an entire country. This is the authority for an entire country.
Great
And
point.
because of the way international news works, it goes beyond that country. But that one country in particular, I speak to my friends who are in the UK, and they know this is the golden god of truth. And worldwide, it had always been known as such. In fact, it was often known as a more accurate news source than a lot of the other news sources, probably because of the accents. And now all of this is coming out. It's been coming out for quite some time, but this is the moment when it finally came to a head. Again, thanks to Trump, because there's plenty of people who have been calling this out. Producer Leo Pearlman, who is one of the biggest producers, one of the partners in Fullwell 73, has been calling this out on his Substack nonstop. And before that, was calling it out on LinkedIn. A lot of major people in the UK. But it took Trump to finally say, okay, time to shut this shit down. And first of all, he's pointing out that they are splicing together clips, making sentences out of context, literally, again, lying by omission, lying by complacency. But beyond that, these are the same people that, despite, let's just use Hamas as an example, being designated a terrorist organization by its government, refuse to call them such. Freedom fighters, whatever the hell they were calling them. This is the same group that was putting documentaries on the air where the narrator was literally the son of a Hamas member. And here's the most disgraceful part of the whole thing. Not everything I just said. The most disgraceful part of the whole thing is that this place didn't get, metaphorically, of course, burned to the effing ground for what they've done. Instead, they thought there was going to be some kind of reckoning, and instead, a couple of execs, and yeah, they were high-level execs, got to resign. And in doing so, they got glowing recommendations and reviews from everybody at the BBC and even within the government saying it's such a shame they have to step down. And now nothing will change. That's the worst part.
Well, it's yes, you're right. And I don't think metaphorically it should be burnt down. I think it should just be burnt down physically, in reality, everything. It's just a giant cesspool. The three main points of the internal memo. So there was the BBC brought in a BBC journalist, to do an internal audit of bias claims within the BBC. And what they found was, one, there's a bias against Trump and conservatives in general. And they used evidence, this one video where they spliced Trump saying, we're going to walk down to
It was
the
a
Capitol.
documentary. It was a documentary.
It was for a documentary. but they spliced where he said we're going to go down there and we're going to do our constitutional rights and we're going to protest peacefully and all that other stuff. And they cut straight to a point where he said we're going to fight like hell. And they made it seem like he said we're going to march down there and fight like hell. So that was number one. But there were other things in there that are also complete evidence of bias. And the second one is on climate change. They are completely biased with the view that humans are causing climate change and we need to do everything in our power to allow China to continue polluting and Pakistan and India could continue polluting, but the West has to pay for past polluting crimes. It doesn't make any sense. And that is why Trump and a lot of people call it a scam, because if it was real, if you really wanted to address climate change, you would treat everybody equally and everybody would have to chip in and help clean this up. You don't let people continue polluting while other people get penalized for not polluting. So that's number two. And number three is the Israel bias, complete bias when it comes to Israel and Hamas, as Golan pointed out. So I am really glad that Trump is threatening to sue them for $1 billion. He's saying by Friday, if they don't make changes to the BBC, which basically means, they're going to have to do like what he did to the universities. He doesn't care about actually suing them. I think he's just using that as leverage. The same thing, as it turns out, Trump didn't really care about getting rid of the filibuster. And I know that these two things are not related, but I love what he just did here. And he's doing it to the BBC. So he's basically saying, I'm going to sue you. What's going to happen is that they're going to have to come forward and do a whole bunch of reforms and bring in some conservative voices because it's all left leaning and balance it out a little bit and Trump will be happy. Now, over to the
we're going to get to
thing.
that. I want to get to that.
But there's a good parallel here.
Yeah.
Because Trump was saying, get rid of the filibuster. And really what he did was he panicked Democrats. They thought he was actually going to get rid of the filibuster. So they caved and the shutdown is over. But we can get to that whenever you're ready.
I want to go, though, a little bit deeper into the BBC because most people don't realize when he says he's suing the BBC, what that means is he's actually suing the British government. So he's actually
Well, it's its own corporation. It's a corporation that's funded by the government through tax dollars,
right?
But it's not controlled by the government.
Right, I understand that. But hence, he's in this by proxy. And go on to the bigger point, I just want to say, we talk about grooming a lot, but one of the things we don't talk about young people, right? There's also a grooming of adults when they don't realize they're being groomed.
100%.
And television has played a major role in this. And, when you watch one of my favorite shows, because it has one of my favorite actors in it, which is Slow Horses, right, with Gary Oldman, which is oddly enough not a BBC show. The BBC passed on it. It is a grooming show. It is groomed to teach people that it's the right-wing nationalists that are the bad people, not the Islamic radicalization. Now, the same thing about television in America, and Ben Stein wrote a book about this over 50 years ago, The View from Sunset Boulevard. But when you think about it, right, there's the old joke that 90% of television shows are about detectives and doctors, and that's 3% of the population. Every show that you watch from Law and Order or whatever it is, it's always the white guy that's bad, right? When we have 100% statistics, as Mend has brought up, that is not true. So they groom us into a way of thinking, and that's a sickness that needs really to be called out. That's what I'll say about that.
I will say, I won't say who it was, but I was watching, spoiler alert, for the latest season of Only Murders in the Building. Sorry, everybody. But I was watching the show, and a friend of mine was watching kind of simultaneously in another place and said to me in the second to last episode, the black guy's going to be the killer? What's that, the first time in decades? And then that guy turned out to be innocent. And then another black guy turned out to be the killer. And I said, hey, well, turned out, hey, it's pretty progressive. And my friend goes, half black. So look, this is the way TV works now, is they want you to believe a certain narrative. Once upon a time, you used to watch a movie like True Lies, and the Islamist terrorists would shoot in the air and go, la, 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 because that's what they did. They went and got nuclear bombs, and they tried to blow up stuff, and they tried to hijack airplanes. And then one day we weren't allowed to say that anymore. And so then it was whoever the bad guy of the moment was that they wanted you to think was the bad guy of the moment. Whether that meant this is going to be the Russians, whether that meant this is going to be the Chinese, usually this is going to be the white nationalists. And it has been that for quite some time
And
now.
they do an incredible job. The point I'm bringing up is because it's very obvious, you as parents seeing the grooming that's going on when you turn on Disney with the children. It's really obvious when you look at it. They make it a little less obvious when it comes to what they're doing in actual television, right? You put a fantastic
But it's not
actor,
just TV. It's not just TV.
but movies too, obviously.
But how is this different from podcasting? How is this different from Tucker Carlson just whitewashing and laundering, giving back and hand and lap massages to every Nazi that comes down the pike and saying it in a way that sounds reasonable until you go, yeah, someone actually said to a friend of mine, you know what the biggest problem with World War II was? When Israel invaded the Nazis. And I was like, wow, man, someone's been indoctrinated with bad information. What's the difference? It's the same thing. All they're doing is basically massaging information into your brain, whether it's oppressed or whatever it is that they want you to believe, and they continue doing it. And the more often a lie is repeated, the more often it becomes truth. John Cleese, a guy who has been on the right side of history for a very long time, someone who did not succumb to the woke bullshit, suddenly started succumbing to the anti-Jewish mind virus this week.
100.
John
And
Cleese?
I
Yeah.
was shocked.
Why
No.
were you
Shocked.
shocked? Why were you shocked? And here's go
Because
on.
there are certain people that seem like they're, as Men and I have mentioned before,
Michael
there are certain people
Caine-
that seem like they're indoctrinated
If
to this
Michael
kind of
Caine
nonsense.
came out in that way, I would be shocked because Michael Caine is a conservative. But men that go for it because this is something you're going to have to think about not only with kids shows, but with adult shows as you're raising your children. It's a really big dilemma that we face because listen, you have Law and Order, which is one of the biggest shows SVU. And how do they portray ICE? Betray ICE in that show. You have all these shows that still have an effect on people.
Yeah, I'm not as much worried about shows, but sure, that is a problem. It's problematic. We just refuse to watch woke America hating shows. Period. End of story. If that's where they want to go, that's fine. I vote with my dollars, and we don't partake in that stuff. As far as
Can I ask you, how do you know? Before you watch the show, how do you know? Now, I'm not talking about the ones that are obvious. I'm talking about you're watching a show, seems great, just you love Gary Oldman's kicking ass.
I didn't realize it until season 2, just for the record.
But that's my point.
Yeah.
How do you
what
know?
happened? Season 2, they came out as being.
It really, season 1, it's like it really started laying in heavy. Like it was like, okay, I get it. It's a starting talking point of the show, the nationalists or whatever it is. But when that's every season,
There was another show that did that. I think it was The Witcher or one of these other shows where it had like 3 great seasons and then they had a woke season and their viewership just fell off a cliff. So if you're continuing to watch, which one?
That's a lot of shows.
It's a lot of shows, but you see it when they go woke, you just stop watching. So Judah, if you're still watching Gary Oldman, and I love that guy, but he's one of the most
on me. You're
talented
right.
actors out there.
That's why I said. That's why I brought it up. I'm calling it out.
And then you stop watching it, right?
Yeah.
You turn it off and you stop watching it.
100%.
And then they see with the ratings. That's the way. Look, the movie business, besides for just being ideological, it's a business. They're trying to make money. And if it's not working, as Golan says many times, claiming that Netflix is not woke, they're just going where the money is. Well, show them where the money is. Stop watching it. Drop it. Make it fall off a cliff.
Or give it a thumbs down.
Yes, I do all of that. I do all the above.
By the way, same thing happened. I was watching that Netflix series, The Bodyguard. Starts off with an Islamic terrorist, the whole thing, and then it's like, just kidding. It's corrupt insiders in the British security state. It's the MI5 white.
I was going to
guys.
say a
You're
different
like,
show is that other one they have, which is what was it called? The Night Watch. Night Watch
yeah.
is the same. It did the same exact thing towards.
This is, by the way, all of the shows are doing it, and they're all doing the misdirect. They're all doing that. Did you think you're racist? Tricked you. It's actually white people.
Which is
Every
why I
single
can't
time.
wait for Fauda to come back, and I can't wait for Tehran to come back, because the real bad guys are the bad guys.
Yeah.
There's none of this like
Amen.
making up a nation in Africa and some.
That's perfectly said. That's perfect. You know what? That's brilliantly said. And there's now, listen. I know this isn't. Well, this is topical because men, as Golan brought up, you're seeing this in the podcast sphere, obviously too, where you have Tucker coming out and saying that Boko Haram obviously is not as bad, I think, as they are. You're massaging Maduro.
He massaged Hamas directly. He
Yeah.
said they seem like they're just a militant group. I
And
know.
Sharia law. And Sharia law,
And
man.
Sharia law,
You
of
know,
course.
it's
Yes.
saying Sharia law is not that bad. That's not really the problem.
What does that
Man,
mean? No crime? What's the problem? Just asking questions.
man.
Tucker's a full-on Qatari Muslim at this point. It's laughable for him to call himself a Christian while he is saying that he despises evangelical Christians while he's running cover for Sharia law. So,
Can I ask you a question though? But
yeah.
can I ask you an honest question? Because we discussed this. Let's say, both of you are in interracial marriages. And I love how though when you say interracial marriage, it really, people only think it's black on white. They don't,
Right. It's
it's
like we
never,
don't count. We got some Asians in our house. It's
right,
like
right.
kind of.
Right. It doesn't count. But man, if somebody said a derogatory term that was in a lot of power towards your wife that you were friends with, and I don't know what a negative Filipino term is, but if somebody called your wife, if she was Indian, a geet, and then you platformed, and that was your friend, and you platformed that person that did that, what would your reaction be?
Well, let's be clear. That's what Tucker did with Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes called JD Vance's wife a jeet. I'm not even sure what a jeet is, but I'm assuming
None
it's
of
some
us
sort of
are. None of
Indian
us are.
slur. I don't know how he comes back from that. And Tucker loves to say, I'm just asking questions, right? We talk about that a lot. But supposedly, that's his good friend JD that he's platforming and treating Nick with kid gloves. He coddled him. I just want to know where you're coming from. But then he just validates everything the guy is saying. No real pushback on any of it. So,
But
Look, of
what would
course,
you
Tucker
do?
is
My question is,
incredibly.
what would you do?
I don't
If
know
he-
how JD comes back from that. I don't know how you correct that. What would I do? I would cut the person off. I'd be like, you're done. You're out of my realm. And I do that. So if I find someone that's toxic, I'm not trying to fix them. It's not my job to try to fix people that are toxic. What I do is I just keep my distance. My time is too valuable to be wasting it on someone like you. Go get yourself fixed and then come back. And if I see you've changed your ways, I like using the Alcoholics Anonymous thing. And that is, you ever meet someone who got
Well, so
sober?
do I.
Judah has a lot. But what they do is they become evangelicals. They can't stop talking about how great life is now and when the last time they had a drink was, and it's been 962 days and 3 hours and 7 minutes. They, like, really go nuts with it. And I like to use that same litmus test on people that have done me wrong. And if you really have changed your ways, you will go out of your way to make it right. You will go out of your way to say, you know what? That thing I did, that was wrong. And it's a great analogy. Like this thing. Thank you, AA and my AA buddies for giving me this one.
Well, it's also why we don't say I'm sorry. When you make amends, it's not like, hey, I'm sorry for ravaging your life. It's like you're basically like asking for amends with the thought process of, I will change. This is going to take many years for this.
But that's the key element, right? If you apologize without the intention to change, it's not a real apology.
Correct.
Right?
And the intention is there when they go out of their way to make it right.
Well, and think about this. Think about how, first of all, let's put this, I think, front and center. JD Vance right now looks weaker because he just sat there while someone basically cucked him and his wife. That's really what happened.
Look how Ted Cruz looked. Remember when Trump went after Ted Cruz's wife, which was the only thing I had an issue with Donald Trump with in 2016? Go after Cruz's father for being in on the assassination of JFK Jr. That's fine, okay? But don't go after the dude's wife. That was my only issue.
But that's the thing, is this is the guy who is now vying to be the next president post-Trump. Right now, according to at least the rumblings internally, unfortunately, in my opinion, he's still the guy that they're looking to take over the ticket at some point. And right now, he just looks like a weak guy who is, if you can't defend your wife represents something. If you can't defend, like we can all recognize that Will Smith shouldn't have stood up during the Oscars and slapped Chris Rock, but we can also internally understand, don't insult the man's wife on national television, right? There's a little piece of us that's like, that was crazy. And also like, damn, good for you, right? So there's a moment here where JD Vance has an opportunity. He doesn't have to do anything physical. All he has to do is say, hey, you're supposed to be my friend. You're platforming someone who does this. And not only that, you're platforming them in a way that kind of helps the rise of white nationalism And the white nationalism, not the one that everyone accuses anyone who's white of being white nationalist, but actual like Ku Klux Klan Nazi shit, right? And if you're doing that and I have an excuse to stop you. The guy said this about my wife. I don't even have to pretend I actually care about stopping you. I get to do it on the merits, and I didn't. It's like week on week on week. I'm so unimpressed with it.
I agree with you. And it's, what, I'll just, because I want to move on a little bit, but I'll just use this as a perfect example. I remember DeSantis when he was running, and Mend and I would have so many conversations. I kept on saying, hold on, this is his perfect exit strategy. He has his off ramp now. Take the off ramp, Ron. Take the off ramp. Mar-a-Lago. Then it kept on going, and I was like, for your own career, because I like Ron DeSantis. I kept on thinking to myself, take the off ramp, and because I like JD Vance, dude. Take the off ramp. Okay, you had the off ramp is right there for you to because if JD were just to speak up, he could really help save the movement, save the
But
party.
I don't like JD Vance, and I think he should have taken the off ramp. And if he had taken the off ramp, I'd actually like him a little bit more, because then he would have had the perfect excuse to be able to take Tucker to task. He would have the perfect excuse to kind of use his influence to excise him from the Erica Kirk sphere. He could have done all sorts of stuff. This would have been the moment you were given a gift by having your wife.
It was his gift. It was his gift. Mend, I want to move on to the point you were talking about before, which is Donald Trump's brilliance with the threat of the filibuster. Listen, the reality is it was not President Trump that was standing on America, it wasn't as the left was trying to think they stood up to Trump. They were standing on Americans. That's just the reality. They were putting their foot on the American people, and they were losing this. Okay, so Donald Trump did threaten with the filibuster, but you got to give credit. Senate held tight, House held tight, and he got 8 Democrats to move to the other side of the aisles to end this shutdown. Good for Donald Trump for doing this. He single-handedly pulled his way through this, and good for him.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic what we just pulled off. I am very pleased that they didn't cave and just start handing out billions of dollars in free healthcare to illegal migrants. So I know there's a lot of people in the Democratic Party that are angry that the Democrats
putting it mildly.
What's that?
It's putting it mildly.
Yeah. But this is great for the country, and it's great for this administration, the things that they're trying to accomplish. And one of those things is getting rid of the millions of people who came here illegally that are violent criminals, and some that are not violent criminals that are just getting swept up in those raids. And sorry, that's just how it works. And the bottom line is that anyone who came here illegally is illegal, and they could get out, they could self-deport, and they could apply legally. And, if their credentials are right, they'll make it back in. So overall, I'm very pleased with the way this went down. I thought that the Democrats were going to continue going with it, and they would rather rule over a pile of ash than, a beautiful empire that was handed to them. So this worked out great.
Well said. And Golan, I think it's important to note that the 8 Democrats that voted or I think it was 4 more or 5 more that are going. Fetterman was there in the beginning, and so are a few more. Jackie Rosen from Vegas, Gene Sides. But I think it's important to note that none of them are up in 2026. So this was not done politically by them. This was done.
No, this is ideological. This is something where they actually had to take a moral stand. And I talk about this a lot. I know I'm like the old man shouting, "Get off my lawn." But I love when people make decisions based on what is right and not what is the right side of the aisle. And I know that applies to both sides. I recognize. But I love when someone's able to say, it's time for us to make a decision that's going to help the American people, that's going to enough is enough already. I get that the way I look at it, my opinion is that the Democrats were holding the government hostage because they didn't like the big, beautiful bill. They didn't like the things that had already been passed. And they were saying, basically, if we can't reverse the fact that we lost, we are now going to throw a tantrum and hold everybody else hostage. And it was about time that someone say, that's not the way government's supposed to work, A. And B, that's not good for anybody. And so I don't think this had anything to do with trying to garner votes or anything else. I think it was literally trying to do the right thing.
Mend, well said. And Mend, it's I love how the women of The View, Ben Shapiro is on the last episode of Trigonometry, And he really, one of the great points he brings up in it is,
Good
comedians,
episode.
it was a good episode. And he's like, comedians need to be comedians and people like this need to be this. And at the end of the day, like people from The View are not comedians, nor are they politicians or pundits for that matter. So it's really, as they're calling for Chuck Schumer's head, which I don't have a problem with, it's really important that people stay in their lane. I know that that's become something of, I learned this lesson years ago, 20 years ago, when I wrote a piece about the economy. And Ben Stein said to me, "That's very good, but who the hell are you to be writing about this?" And I thought, oh, what a good point. It was like such a good point. I had zero knowledge in what I was writing about. So I've read up on it. I've read about Milton Friedman. I've read all these different things. Neither here nor there, man. People aren't staying in their lane. These Democrats did, and they'll get attacked, they'll get assaulted, but they did the right thing.
Yes, they did do the right thing because the government's now open and hundreds of thousands of Americans are going to be getting their paychecks again, especially as we go into Thanksgiving weekend. Between the amount of air traffic controllers, because they were not getting paid during the shutdown. So you had a lot of them calling in sick, and then they were going out and driving for DoorDash and Uber Eats and whatever else to try to make ends meet. And I'm not saying that I blame them for that. If you got to support your family and you're check to check, then you do what you got to do. I like what Trump is offering now. He's saying any of the air traffic controllers who didn't call in sick should get a $10,000 bonus. I think that's great. Talking about money, Trump is talking about sending out a $2,000 check to every single American because we're making so much money off the tariffs. I think that's absolutely the wrong move. And I know that my brother Nev on the other podcast would love this because he just loves that. But I think there's so much better that we could do. One is
there's a lot of people who would love that.
Reduce tax, cut down the income tax to nothing, build monuments. We haven't been building monuments in this country. It's what makes us great. It's what actually people enjoy. People don't enjoy things. And if you give out $2,000 to everybody, first of all, how are you going to know who to give it to? I think they're just going to issue a check to everybody with a social security number. And that's going to be terrible because some of these people don't pay any tax to begin with. So why would they be getting any money? If we could build things that are public use, parks, monuments, things that attract tourism, that make people proud of their cities and their country, that's what we should be doing with the money. But most importantly, we should be reducing tax. The tax burden on those of us who pay is tremendous. So
can I tell you something? I was thinking, it's like funny that you're bringing this up because I agree with you 100%. Because Golan, I was reading before the show about, listen, it's like I learned this on dating apps, like all these women, and I always swipe left when they say this, when they say passport ready. And there are a lot of people that travel. So like Laos has.
What does passport ready mean? Like I'm ready to travel?
It means you better have money to date me.
Okay.
And that's exactly what that means. And I'm always like swipe.
Gross.
So I'm always swiping left. But I was reading before the show about these two American women, and we see this all the time, and that go on vacations to these remote countries, then end up people dying from the alcohol or fentanyl, or it's extremely unsafe in these places. And to Men's point, we live in the greatest country in the world. There's so many places in America people could visit. Make America exotic. Make the airports exotic. Make wanting to travel within America. I'm not saying that don't travel around the world. I think it's important to travel to different places. But I got to be honest, if somebody said to me, "Hey, Judah, do you want to go to Laos?" I'd be like, not really. I mean, like on the bucket list, that's not, it doesn't, but I would love to go to places in America. I would love to go to Mount Rushmore. I would love to, if we live in Los Angeles. Disneyland is 45 minutes. It should be an hour ride. It takes 3.5 hours to get to Disneyland. Make things more accessible in our country. Build up our monorails, our infrastructure, all these things so Americans could feel proud.
Yeah, look, many years ago, or for about 20 years, I was managing at the Telluride Film Festival. And I used to drive up, and sometimes I'd fly, and I'd come from Arizona, or I'd come from California. And when I got married, my wife and I decided we were going to go up. I was taking her for the first time. We decided to take the train, take the Amtrak up over the Rocky Mountains, over into the Telluride Valley. And man, one of the most beautiful, wonderful, like vista experiences you could possibly have. And something that, and I've traveled all over the world. I mean, you guys who have been listening, I live in Europe. My family's in the Middle East. I used to live in Bulgaria. My family's from Asia. Like we're all over the place. And it was one of the most breathtaking things I've ever seen. Unfortunately, my wife found out she was pregnant halfway through and was throwing up the rest of the train ride. But man, it was beautiful until then. And I can tell you, America has something that no other place has, simply because of the vastness of it. There are other countries that are vast, but they're also very homogenized. America is vast in a different way. If you start traveling in the United States and you start moving, let's say you start on the west and you start moving east, you can go to entirely different terrains, entirely different mountainous regions, valleys, lakes. Literally every place you go can be different. And that's something that you can only experience when you really are jumping from country to country elsewhere. And it becomes a much more rich experience if you really understand how to travel the United States. I fully agree with that. As someone who lives outside the United States right now, it's something that I fully plan to do with my kids, get an RV and go edge to edge in the U.S. at some point.
We drove cross country and it was amazing. We did
You just learned
Toronto.
not to do it in your Tesla.
Yeah, we did it in a Tesla, a Model X, big Tesla, shipped all our stuff to California, and then we drove. And it was a fantastic trip.
They only had to stop every 17 minutes to recharge the Tesla.
No, it was great. The Colorado and Utah. I mean, if anybody hasn't been to those states, like we stopped there and spent weeks in Colorado and Utah. Amazing places to stop at. Back to this thing with the Trump and the $2,000 that he's thinking about giving away. Outside of every single airport, you come out of an airport in America, it's a crap hole. There's litter everywhere. It's disgusting. And that's how you're welcoming tourists to the richest country on earth. Doesn't make any sense. Clean it up. We were just in Vegas for a convention and you have gorgeous hotels and beautiful, and a block away you have these squalid apartment buildings. Like, I never understood that, why the big casinos don't just buy up all that real estate and just make it a big green park or something where your guests can look out and see something pretty versus just this hellhole that looks like a slum. And that's Vegas.
Well, listen, and when you look at New York, my biggest fear initially isn't the financial. That'll take some time to really break. It's the crime that's going to be out of control.
Yeah, it's going to be great. They're going to have mental health experts go to all of these violent situations, and we're going to have a lot of mental health experts getting killed by violent criminals. So I'm glad.
I'm not against that.
Well, my mom used to be in the field, so I could see how these well-intentioned, liberal-leaning people that majored in sociology and psychology are going to be showing up trying to convince a guy who's high on meth with a gun and a knife and hostages to let it all go. It's not going to go over well.
Wow. I'm gonna dive in here with this new piece of information that broke just now, which is Rand Paul, as always, one for all and all for one. Rand Paul, as the government has been on life support, as it seems like we're finally breaking through here. One Republican senator decided this is the time. This is the moment he wants to throw up a roadblock. Rand Paul is demanding changes, and I quote, to hemp product regulation. This is the thing. He's going to hold up, potentially, the breaking of this government shutdown in order to talk about hemp product regulation. I mean, a time when you would think true leaders would like negotiate and compromise and rally, and this is just, man, I want to say disappointing, but it's entirely expected from Rand Paul, if you ask me.
You know, the apple does not fall far from the tree. I know he is the libertarian god, but Ron Paul's a piece of garbage, and so is Rand Paul for that matter. And at the end of the day, they'll say a couple things you might agree with, but when you look at the totality of their careers, they're nothing but trash. And
consistently, by the way.
Yeah.
And I know, by the way, for those of you who are like, no, what he's consistent on is fiscal restraint. This is always the mask that they put on when he wants to play these games. It's like, oh, anything that I can stand in the way of, it's because of fiscal restraint. At a certain point, you're just standing in the way. You're not principled about anything.
Well said. So sorry to break that news to you, men, but it just came out as we were doing the show. So Rand Paul is putting up this roadblock. It's like, it reminds me of McCain when he gave that thumbs down with Obamacare on the floor. This is, again, Republicans shooting themselves in the foot.
That's what I was going to say, by the way. This is not Republicans versus Democrats. This is actual governance issues right here. This is, our party holds the presidency, the Senate majority, like the gridlock is still happening. So what message is that send to everybody? The message is, we don't know how to govern. We can't do it. We can't figure it out. This is the exact opposite of America First, of taking care of Americans. Open the government, especially if everyone's willing to do it. One guy's going to get in the way, one guy. And this kind of timing, I mean, just trash, trash. You said it perfectly, trash.
Never leave it up to, Ron Paul to screw something up.
Or Rand Paul in this case.
Ron Paul.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like some of the libertarian views that they have. I hate that they keep on screwing things up on the Republican
But that's
side.
the problem with libertarianism. That's the problem is you can't, it's like libertarianism is like cherry picking like certain things. You're right. I agree with you. I like certain things. I like what they should stand for. The reality is it's always masking something way deeper.
I don't think that's a libertarian issue. I think that has to do with the people that identify as libertarians. That comedian Smith, he identifies as
I
libertarian.
hate that this is a phrase that we use now. I identify as. It just makes my skin crawl. But sorry, continue.
Yeah. I use it all the time though. Yeah. When there's a long line to get into someplace, I go, I identify as retarded. Let me skip the line.
I identify as the front of the line. Yeah, I do that sometimes.
Yes.
Look, libertarianism as a concept, individual freedom, thumbs up. Too much government power, thumbs down. Like, who doesn't agree, honestly, when it comes to like really logical people? The problem is these guys are not doing any of their ideological bullshit because of their libertarianism. It's like they happen to be libertarian.
Yeah,
and they also happen to be
there's a
assholes.
lot of other stuff there, but they happen to agree or identify with a lot of the libertarian stuff, so they identify as libertarian, but
and they're the leaders.
Just
of the
to go
movement.
back to the retarded comment, I'm not talking about disabled people. I'm talking about that I actually am slightly retarded, which is just, not my full capacity that I should be. I was probably dropped on my head as a kid, but I am in no way disparaging people with mental, cognitive, any kind of issue that they are struggling with. Love everybody that has issues, and I'd love to help. So just clearing that up before all the hate mail comes in.
This reminds me of the scene in Jerry Maguire where Tom Cruise is just shouting, "I love black people." Not sure this is going to work for you, men, but good on you.
Here goes.
Good try. But to the bigger point, though, go on to what he just said is really part, and I'm not trying to knock on you, men, in any way, is the big problem that we have moving forward. Some go on. Sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It does. Sounds fantastic. All these things sound fantastic, but they don't work in a country with 340 million people. That's why healthcare will never work here. That's why certain things will never work here, is because we have 340 million people that see very differently on a lot of things. So you're always going to have people that romanticize, like Mamdani, socialism, this and this and this and this. And
can I say, though, there is a difference? Because if you give me libertarianism, I can talk about free markets. I could talk about individuality. I could talk about small government. And all of those things are actually good. And then when you expand, they might start to falter. When it comes to socialism, very idea. And I understand that it sounds really just, this is the music to my ears. Human welfare over profit. I mean, could anything sound more benevolent than that? But then you're like, but wait, a society that doesn't make a profit, how do they take care of their humans? How does the human welfare occur if there is no profit? So now it becomes, in its very essence, from day one, before you even expand beyond the concept, it already has a fallacy built into it. And so the difference is that socialism was never going to work.
But that's not my point.
I understand. I just want to point out that there are certain things that sound good and certain things that never do, but I understand what you're saying. Yes.
My point, though, is to what Mend is bringing up. And Mend, this is going to be a huge problem moving forward, is how we combat people like Mamdani moving forward. Because we can't just say, oh, you're a communist. Oh, you're a socialist. As we discussed last week, Mend, that doesn't bother people. Calling people libertarian doesn't bother people. Whatever, you have to fight people with common sense, as President Trump has brought up. The problem is common sense isn't common anymore. And we have a really uphill battle in fighting what's next, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, we could just continue spreading truth, which is what we do. We're a beacon of light in a dark time. You're not going to get everything to change. What happens is that some people are out there are finding out a lot of truths, especially when it comes to Trump and the economy, the immigration stuff, where the Democrats said, We needed Congress to make changes, and there was nothing they could do about allowing 10,000 people in a day. There was nothing they could do. Just their hands were tied. Trump came in, and within a week, it was down to zero. And now we're deporting those people. Those types of things show you the fallacy of their argument. It's funny. I saw there was a woman who had a bakery, and she was asked to make a cake for a gay couple, and she refused, and she went to court, lost, and then she tried to bring it to the Supreme Court. And what was on the line was gay marriage, right? The gay marriage rights. Somehow that became the thing. And I remember seeing people posting online saying, Trump is trying to take away our rights to get married. People I knew were posting this. I said, what are you talking about? And then I looked into it, and it turns out that it's not Trump. It's a case that might go before the Supreme Court. And it was a woman who, she had this bakery and refused to bake a cake. Well, anyway, the Supreme Court has rejected an appeal brought by former Kentucky County Clerk Kim Davis. I guess she wasn't a cake baker. She was a county clerk. Sorry, I mixed up two cases. A Christian who lost a lawsuit refusing to issue a marriage license to a same-sex couple and ordering her office to do the same. So the Supreme Court refused to hear the case, which means that her case is dead. It's done. It's over with. There is going to be no change to the Marriage Equality Act or whatever it was that allowed gay people to get married. But the interesting thing here is that when this woman brought the case, you had everybody on social media saying Trump is trying to take away our rights.
First
now
of all,
that
they
SCOTUS
immediately put it at Trump's feet.
Yeah, they throw it at Trump's
to do
feet.
with the
But now that
conversation.
SCOTUS has turned down even hearing the case, they're not even interested in hearing it. Do you think anybody's going to post Trump has saved gay marriage? No, none of that. That just goes away. And this is almost like everything else out there, is that the initial shock, the initial headline is what sticks. So when, you have a church get bombed in Gaza, and the BBC immediately puts out Israel bombed the church. And then it takes 3 weeks with forensic analysis to figure out that it was an Islamic Jihad failed rocket that actually hit the church or the hospital, and 20 people died, not 200 or 2,000 people died. Doesn't matter. At that point, it's already out. It's already gone, and you've lost the message.
And look, I think you mentioned, Judah, you mentioned Mamdani, right? So I think this is why we have to be so careful. And when I say we, I mean everybody who is trying to point out or fight against what might be coming next. I think we have to be careful. I mentioned this to friends of mine earlier tonight. We have to be careful not to be too hyperbolic, because that hyperbolic response is going to be what sticks. People are like, he's going to implement Sharia law, and he is going to, he's going to take the World Trade Center and turn it into a mosque, and like all this stuff. It's like, well, clearly stuff that's not going to happen. So now you just sound like the crazy person shouting on a street corner. But now all the people who even gave you, or perhaps even thought about giving you, a shred of credibility are going to take that credibility away. They're going to go, these guys are just nuts. And he didn't do it. And so that's that. In fact, Ben Shapiro mentioned, I think it may have been on that trigonometry pod, or maybe in a Megyn Kelly interview, said the best thing that could happen to Mamdani is that he can't do a single thing that he wanted to do. Because then he can say, big government foiled again, and I wanted to do all that stuff, and he can still look like a hero. Because if he does start to do that stuff, and we actually see the failed policies, man, then people are going to be like, this is what socialism is? What the hell were you thinking? So we have to be real careful about how hyperbolic we get. We have to know. And we
also have to be honest. We have to be honest about the Mamdani thing. October 7th got him elected. And that should scare everybody. And, to the point you brought up, the person that's running his chief of staff, which is Linda Sarsour, has put out a memo. Basically, anybody that's hired cannot be pro-Israel. Anybody. So the way I'm thinking
but understand, though, how they're phrasing this. He's not going after the Jews, right? He's going Zionists. He's separating. This is this is what's going to happen. This is going to be the era of the good Jew, as my friend David Kaufman, former writer for the New York Post, said. This is going to be the era of the good Jew in New York, because you're either going to be a good Jew or you're going to be a genocide lover, right? And so if you are pro-Israel, that's a problem. But you can be Jewish and not be pro-Israel, and then I'm totally cool with you. You can even be in my administration, right? That's the stuff that we need to worry about. But what's going to happen on a PR level, and Mamdani's real good at this shit, is he's going to say, look at all these Jews I've got. Look at all these Jews. It's all good. You thought I was going to be anti-Jewish, but look, I've packed my administration chock full of these anti-Zionist Jews, and that'll be the way that like the quote unquote dog whistle that people will be able to look at and say, "What are you calling anti-Semitic? Look at how many Jews he loves." That's going to be something we have to be aware of, and we have to
Well,
be
Megyn
careful about
Kelly
how we
did this
call it
last
out.
week. Megyn Kelly defended Tucker or Mamdani when he said, going after IDF, the IDF thing. And there's two more things I
Right.
want to discuss. He was attacking an IDF soldier, not Jews. But men, there's two things I want to discuss as we're all excited to be back together. Men, the first thing is the ICE thing, right? So I think it's the Crips in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, have called for the shooting, open day shooting of ICE officers in Chicago. This is where I'm having a really hard time, I got to be honest, with the DOJ and the FBI. There have been so many credible online attacks from people of what should be done to ICE, and they need January 6th. The point of January 6th for people was to shut conservatives up, okay? Was to put the scare of the fear of God in conservatives to not speak up against Democrat policy, and if you do it, you face 30 years in prison. Men, people need to be punished for these things they are saying online. You put 5 people in prison for 15 years for putting ICE officers' lives in danger. I could almost guarantee you this will stop immediately.
Well, here's the problem with what's going on with ICE. So, first of all, it's worth noting that a man opened fire on Chicago agents.
By the way, it wasn't Crips, it was the Latin Kings. But
Latin
continue.
Kings, I'm sorry. I'm
Right.
sorry to get
Yeah,
my
yeah.
gangs.
They don't know who opened fire this time. They know that the Latin Kings put out a hit on ICE, but this guy is actually still on the loose. Opened fire on ICE agents this past weekend. So what's happening is that the people that are actually committing crimes, the ones
Oh no!
hitting,
Wait.
blocking,
I thought they caught the guy. They caught.
I don't think they caught him yet.
I was under, and maybe I'm conflating two different things, but I thought there was an illegal alien, the past felony firearm violation that was arrested after the thing with the border patrol attack in Chicago.
As
I'll look it up.
to
I'll look
about
it
an
up. Keep
hour ago, I
talking.
don't
I'll
think he
look
was
it up.
caught, but maybe since then he got caught.
Okay.
So what they're doing is, the people that are doing a lot of these bigger crimes, ramming ICE cars, shooting at ICE, they're getting arrested. But the people that are blocking, the people that are screaming, the people that are throwing things at ICE, they're not. And they need to arrest a lot more of these people. And they need to throw the book at them. You're right.
And the people that are inciting it online.
That too.
If you
Well, that's the big problem, is that you have elected leaders on the Democrat side, which are calling ICE the Gestapo. And if you had Nazis running through your neighborhood, it would be incumbent upon you to resist. These are not Nazis. This is the guys protecting our
Literally
homeland.
law enforcement.
It's
By the way,
unbelievable
yes,
that they've gone there.
as of 4 hours ago, the guy, unidentified suspect, a Mexican citizen, was in a Jeep that drove up near the agent, fired shots for driving away. At the time of his arrest, which just happened, I mean, it's literally a brand new news story, was found with a firearm. Illegal alien with a criminal history. Been arrested for that border patrol attack in Chicago.
So not a citizen. But again, getting back to it.
Shocking, not a citizen.
But again, Golan, getting back to it, there has to be this Pam Bondi and the DOJ have to go hard after these people. And you could shape the narrative that it doesn't look terrible. We have to protect our law enforcement. And I don't think ICE is getting lumped in with our law enforcement. Even if it did, I don't think it would matter. There's so much hate from the left against all branches of our law enforcement, including the military. And this has to stop. January 6th scared everybody on the conservative movement. It did. People got debanked. People got put in prison for 30 years. What they did to our movement is disgusting, and it's a disgrace, and I pray that they get punishment for it. But this is legit what I'm actually calling for, because you're putting these people's lives in danger.
And this, by the way, is for those of you who don't know the full news story, is the Latin Kings and other Mexican cartel gangs are offering up, is it $50,000 a head? Is that right?
I believe
you
so.
guys know?
Yeah.
I think it was $50,000 a head for ICE agents. I mean, this is no joke. And I mean, this is one of those things that when you hear it out loud, you kind of picture that the only thing we can do is like that scene out of Sicario, time to go into Mexico and take out the cartels. Because I think at this point, they are fully operating as terrorist organizations. targeting law enforcement and government officials. To me, it's a no-brainer.
Okay, thank you both for that. And the last thing I want to get into is I got to tell you something. Nick Fuentes makes a great point. I agree with Nick Fuentes on one thing and one thing only.
I had that on my bingo card. All right, here we go. All right.
And
Judah agrees with Nick Fuentes. Look at that. All right,
Here we
continue.
go.
And here's the thing I agree with Nick Fuentes is he's right. You can't separate Judaism, Jews, and Israel. Okay? You can't. And I'm not going to apologize for that. As a Jew in America, I'm not going to apologize for being an absolute Zionist. But at the same time, I love America. Love America more than life. And I love Israel more than life. But you can't separate it. You can't do a disconnect go on. It's our Jewish heritage. And so I agree with him on that at 100%. And the difference is there isn't a purity test. I'm not more loyal to one country than I am another, by no means. And none of us are. And I don't think anybody's ever called for that. So that's really where the rubber meets the road on that one.
Can you imagine someone who who loves America more than men, who literally runs a website called American Exceptionalism, but also is so purely a Zionist and understands that the indigenous people, the Jews who have returned to their homeland of Israel, belong there? Can you imagine someone who embodies both those things more? Judah, you are in that category. I'm in that category. The very idea, and thank you, by the way, Nick Fuentes, for being a Zionist. I had no idea. I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and spread that, everybody. It's really important that everyone find this out about him. Judaism, as my wife points out, our fatal flaw in the Jews' fatal flaw is that we just named everything Jew, Judaism, Jewish. And so that means the religion, the people, the nation, the civilization, the ethnicity, the shared history, the memory, the culture, the homeland. It's all Jew, 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 Jew. And it's true. Those are all very different things, and they all also are very connected to one another. And Zionism is just an expression of that. And so whenever anyone says, and we've talked about this before, but whenever anyone says, I'm just criticizing the government, my first answer is, what does that have to do with Zionism? What does criticizing the government have to do with Zionism? That's like saying, I'm just criticizing the government, I'm an abolitionist. What are you talking about? Those words don't go together. And so the very idea that you can criticize the government, yeah, I think all three of us have criticized the Israeli government and the U.S. government and governments that we love and people and even leaders that we love. That has nothing to do with the fact that we love America. That has nothing to do with the fact that we love Israel, and that has nothing to do with Zionism. So the idea that you can't separate these things is 100% fact, Judah. I agree with you. And once again, I agree with the major super Zionist, Nick Fuentes.
Hold on. I'm getting him his $7,000 check right now.
Fuentes, that $7,000 was for you. But men, at the same time, I don't think you'll meet three people that want to defend Christianity more than the three of us. And I don't think you'll meet three of us that have been screaming before anybody was about the massacre against Christians going on around the world. And yes, as a country, we owe it to our Christian brothers across the world to protect them way more than we do our Qatar brotherhood in Qatar. And by the way, isn't it remarkable that Trump is going to be Trump, and that's always going to be the case. But isn't it remarkable that no commentators, men, are because Trump has offered to protect Qatar and Saudi Arabia. He's offered Saudi Arabia to protect them with U.S. troops. Mm-hmm. He's never given that protection to Israel. Never been offered to Israel U.S. troops on the ground,
and never been asked for.
Right,
and never been said a thing about that. They've said, we're not going to go die for Israel, but none of them have said anything about going and dying for Qatar, Tucker Carlson, or Saudi Arabia. So yeah, the hypocrisy, I mean, it gets me. I can't understand how anybody who's a Christian, a man of faith, could watch someone like Tucker, who's running cover for the Muslims right now, as the Muslims
and
slaughter
Venezuela.
Christians. Huh?
At Venezuela, there's Farah statements with Venezuela now.
Venezuela is more of an American thing. Yes, Venezuela has Hezbollah bases and
but I mean him coddling Maduro.
Literally shouting out Maduro, patting him on the back, saying what a wonderful guy he is. Like Tucker has
been. But more than that, I'm talking about from a religious
on the
standpoint.
Wrong side. Yeah, go ahead.
From a religious standpoint, if you're a Christian, if you're a man of faith, how do you stand there and listen to a guy like Tucker defend Sharia law? How do you listen to a guy like Tucker running cover for the Muslims as the Muslims are the biggest slaughterers of Christians today? How do you defend that?
Because can I tell you what it is? Can I be honest with you what I really
Brain
think it
rot
is?
is what it is.
Yeah, it's a cult. It's the
Yes.
cult of Tucker. And the
It
reason
is.
I say that is because I love when people comment on a post and say, well, if he said that, and I'm like, if, it's called Google. Okay, Google exactly what he said. Please don't say if somebody said that. We know exactly what Tucker has said. So,
Well, by the way, but this is something that consistently now within the online sphere, people don't think, they don't verify, they don't Google, they don't look up. I just saw yesterday, I was looking at YouTube, and Awaken with JP. You guys know that Awaken with JP, that online creator guy. He put up a post, a poll. Doesn't matter. He's one of those popular right wing guys, and he put up a poll. Who do you trust more, Tucker Carlson or Ben Shapiro? And I just had to look, like, morbid curiosity, of course, knowing what I was going to find. And it was like 77% Tucker Carlson. And all I could think was, what about a guy like this, as men just pointed out? What about a guy like this that has flip-flop hard? Flip-flop on basically everything that he's ever believed, everything he's ever said publicly. You can go find all the stuff he said publicly and see that everything he's saying is different now. Everything that he's saying also sounds suspiciously like it's anti-American, especially like it's anti, like when he's platform about Churchill's the greatest villain and the Jews, always the Jews in Israel and everything else. I hate evangelicals and what did he say? Christian Zionists. I hate them more
Christian
than
Zionists,
anybody. I hate them more than anybody, he said. Tucker doesn't speak accidentally. When he says, I hate them more than anybody, that means more than Nazis, more than Islamists, more than anybody. This is the guy you trust at a 77% rate? What the F is wrong with all of you? So yes, it is a cult, and it is a cult that we have to figure out a way to pull them out of, because they are not going to self-correct.
yeah, I just want to end it with this because you both of you exceptional points. Mend, we all have a friend, but I think I'm closer with him, obviously. But he was texting me yesterday, and he was like really distraught. He's a Christian, and he's a Christian. I can't believe I'm even using the term. He's a Christian Zionist, because I've never really heard that before until Tucker brought it up. But there's been no bigger advocate
Is there any
for
other
Israel.
kind of Christian?
Yeah,
I don't
right,
even understand.
exactly right. There's no bigger advocate for Israel, for Jews, for America than my friend is, and he's really frightened by this this Stalin-loving, Nazi-loving embrace that's going on. And I get it. We all have these days where we get into this, the doom scrolling and the dark holes of the web. And I just felt horrible for him, like horrible. And, today as the 8 Democrats switched sides, I said, well, thank God, that's our saving grace for a little bit, is the crap show that is the left. But he's a really brilliant guy. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met, and most well-read person also I've ever met. And he's frightened with what he sees. He's really frightened. Man, how do we?
He's not alone. He's not alone. I have friends who are very high up within the church, very high up within places like the TPUSAs and other ones that you guys know, some of who I'm talking about. And I'm getting messages from them daily saying the rot is not just amongst the cult. It is throughout the church. It is something that it's like the slow creep that we've seen now with pro-Palestinianism becoming something that you can just see on every street corner. It's a similar thing happening within the church too, and it's incredibly frightening.
The stuff that we're seeing out of Tucker shouldn't just be alarming to anyone in Jewish faith or any other faith in particular. This should be alarming to anybody out there. When you have somebody who's normalizing Hitler, he's saying he brings on people. He doesn't, Tucker, this is the genius of Tucker. He doesn't say it himself. He'll bring on someone and have them say the words that he doesn't want to say himself.
And then he goes,
yeah,
well, it's an interesting
Oh,
point.
is that so interesting? I'm just asking questions. But, he brought on the guy who claimed that Churchill was the bad guy and Hitler was the good guy. He brings on Nick Fuentes, who's a self-proclaimed neo-Nazi, and uses the N-word and talks about them as animals all the time. This is the guy. And he also talked about JD Vance's wife, but talks about so that would be alarming. That would be alarming to anyone, much less a person of faith. Because if you're a man of faith, you're a Christian, a Catholic, or somebody that believes that we're all made in the image of God, and these are not religions that are calling out for you to go out and behead somebody because they don't believe in your religion, right? So we're talking about the normal faiths, not the ones that are asking people to chop their heads off. How do you justify a guy like Tucker who claims to be speaking on behalf of, Christians and Americans and all that, when he's justifying the people that are destroying America? They're destroying the Christian faith. They are murdering and savaging Christian villages throughout the world. This isn't just an isolated thing. This is not just in Africa. It's everywhere. The
Can I
entire
also
Middle East used to be.
oversimplify?
What's that?
I'm just going to oversimplify too. Let's put all the politics aside for just a moment. When you are talking, that idea, never date someone who's rude to a waiter, like just the concepts of like certain human concepts. They say, if you want to know who someone is, show me who their friends are. So you're showing me JD Vance and the friend is Tucker and his friends are the people that he platforms, right? You're looking at someone like Candace Owens. How does she treat her friends? Well, her friend died. First thing she did was leak his texts online and try and use it for clout chasing. Like, these people are not good people. They're not moral people. They're soulless people. So even if you put the politics aside, even if you put all the stuff we disagree with aside, why would you follow somebody that you can see, especially if you're a religious person, especially if you're a Christian? Why would you follow someone that you can see is amoral? That's the biggest question I have.
That's a very well point.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I think that's exceptionally put. I think that's a great way to end the show.
Well, before we end the show, we got to make an announcement. David helped us set up the swag store. So we've got tees, hoodies, baseball caps, mugs, all kinds of good stuff. Go to thedailycheatsheet.com. We're going to put a link into our site, whatever. You'll be able to check out all the goods, support the show. But more than that, let everybody know where the light is. And by wearing something that says the Daily Cheat Sheet on it, you're going to be spreading the good word, the gospel of Mend, Judah, and Golan, Professor Golan. So go out and get some.
I like it. And I have to do one shout out. I promise.
Well, we have to start getting the swag on ourselves first.
That's right. All right. We'll get our swag going. But I also want to shout out Beck and Jose in the UAE listening to us every day. Jose telling me in his car on the way every day, listening to the show. Man, we love you. Thank you for listening, and you're a real match.
We love the UAE. I can't wait to go visit the UAE. It's just
we got.
One thing we know is it's very different than Laos.
We should do a show there. That would be amazing.
It's very different than Laos. We know that to be 100% true. And really, like if you're just listen. Again, getting back to it.
Isn't Leo Lay based in
what?
No, maybe.
What is Leo Lay? Is that Frito Lay?
No. He's an activist on X and Instagram and.
I do like Frito Lay. I'm not sure about Leo.
Okay, we'll figure it out for next time. But getting back to it, the part you brought up, men, during the show about building America back up. I think. Listen, I'm not gonna try and convince people how much we love this country, but I love this country and I want people coming here and I want people being safe here. And go on, I got to tell you right now, we have a lot of places in our country, many major cities that are not safe to visit. It's gross. It's absolutely gross. And we need to build on infrastructure. And I can't think of a bigger legacy for President Trump. Not only would be the Abraham Accords, would be like the America Accords. And really building this country back up to what it needs to be. We're like a third world country in many ways. When you look at they talk about the airports in China or Japan or wherever it is compared to how it is here, we're not doing great. So
I mean, I'm someone here. I'm traveling by train a lot, and it's European trains are one of the great wonders of the world. And man, having traveled by train in the United States, a lot of train stations you don't want to pull into, and I wish it wasn't the case.
Yeah, but you've been threatened and almost stabbed on your trains in Spain because of so I wouldn't exactly.
No, that was on the bus.
That was okay. Yeah. On that note, listen, culture is extremely important. That's why I really wanted to start the show with it today. I just want people to realize that there's all forms of indoctrination. It's not just kids getting groomed. Americans have been groomed and they continue to be groomed. So be careful of what you watch. And it bothers me to no end that an actor that I love go on, like Gary Oldman, who just got knighted, is on a show like this that's spreading so much disinformation. I see men wanting to say something, so say it, man.
I mispronounced his name. It's Lo Al-Sharif.
You didn't just miss it. You just got it
What?
totally
I was
wrong.
going to say a moment ago he was Frito-Lay. So I
Yeah,
think
you didn't
perhaps.
just get his name wrong.
Yeah, it is
Mispronounce it.
this gentleman right here.
I love that dude.
Yeah, that
A
guy is
hero.
great.
If you talk about someone who exemplifies living the life of peace and coexistence, this guy is my guy. I mean,
Say his
he
name
is
again.
just.
Say his name again.
Let me get it. Don't want
On
to mess
that
it
note,
up.
I thought I was giving you a layup there. I apologize.
on that note, I want to thank everybody from the bottom of our hearts. And don't forget to go to thedailycheatsheet.com. This is dailycheatsheet.com. And it's great to have Golan back. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.